Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the wonderful Wednesday webinar where we bring information from the movement of movements over the last 30 years of people trying to help the environment and community in many different spaces and places. And tonight, for your delight and delectation, we have Curly from Reclaim the Power Outreach team. Reclaim the Power group that I really massively respect. They've been non-hierarchically organising for many years. I think first encountered after Occupy movement around Balcombe, the anti-fracking camp, which actually won. And I think now Balcombe's got a kind of whole solar co-op and on into the No Dash for Gash and the anti-fracking campaigns. But no doubt Curly will tell us a bit more about that. But they're re-energising and bringing together a whole new wave of action this year against the Drax, massive polluting situation going on with Drax, and they're chopping down prime rainforest, well, forests from Canada and around the world to burn in wood pellets. But we'll hear more. Over to Curly. Thank you very much for coming. Yeah, tell us more about Reclaim the Power and campaigns, Curly. Over.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Curly, as introduced. And I'm just going to do a hopefully slightly condensed version of a talk that we've been putting together about Drax, about Reclaim the Power, and about what we're doing this year. So I'm just going to share some slides and talk you through them. And then hopefully we'll have time to kind of chat about it at the end, about what we want to do. Coming off from it. Okay, my internet's not the fastest, so sometimes it takes a bit of time for stuff to pick up my response. But yeah, so yeah, Reclaim the Power. We're going to hopefully cover all of these different sections, which is just about zooming out to the world right now. Where are we in terms of the climate crisis and what's happening? And then talk about Reclaim the Power and about why we're targeting Drax this year, what Drax is, why it's such an important target, and then more specifically about what we're actually doing and how you can maybe get involved. So, as I said, to start with talking about the climate crisis, we were actually planning for this talk to have some horrible statistics or predictions about what's happening in the future, and the kind of stuff that I imagine everyone here is probably quite well aware of, and it's why they're already active in the movement. So instead, we're going to summarize with 3 memes from the Crab Museum. So first of all, what's happening at the moment is not your fault as an individual. However, it is our responsibility as a collective, as everyone in the society, to solve the climate crisis. And it's something that we all have to come together and do. We can't do that without forgetting that the richest 1% of the people in the world are responsible for double the emissions of the poorest 50%. And you've got a little crab there telling us so. And this is the kind of context we come into it. And oh, wait 1 second. I seem to have lost my screen share. I'm going to come back to it.
Okay. It'll come back, don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay, how are you getting on, Curly?
Yeah, 1 sec. I'll be there.
Nice. All right, so cabaret compare styling. Was that video started again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Should be back.
Yep, we've got a black screen there. Curly start sharing. Very important points.
Right. So moving on from that quickly, because of the context we all know, let's talk about Reclaim the Power, who we are. And other than that crew of people behind there, we're a grassroots direct action network. So we use direct action and we come together as communities in our own time to organize and directly disrupt the industries that are pushing forward the climate crisis. We're very specifically anti-capitalist. We believe that capitalism is the root cause, one of the core root causes of the climate crisis, and along with colonialism as well. And we seek to challenge both capitalism and colonialism in the work that we do. As much as possible, all of our strategies and targets are guided by frontline communities. We're talking about fracking, Felix mentioned. These group of people are the Lancaster Danners, I think, who are the part of the anti-fracking movement for anyone who's involved in that. And it's about Reclaim the Power as a large direct action network, making interventions as much as we can. And we've been around for 11 years, starting in 2013. Like Phoenix gave a quick introduction to, starting as no dash for gas and turning into Reclaim the Power and coming out the climate camp movement that began in the UK. And in that time, we've controversialized fracking, or helped controversialize fracking, making it economically and politically unviable, introducing a moratorium. And then as a result of that campaign, which we were part of, introduced a moratorium on fracking. We helped shut down open cast mining in South Wales. And you've seen some pictures of some of the actions against the open cast mines already in this slide. Undermined the rollout of new gas-fired power stations in a scale that was attempted by the governments at the time. And then in 2019, we organized the first action camp that bring together both migrant justice and climate justice in the same space and challenging both issues as intersections with the same root causes of colonialism and capitalism. We'll go a little bit more about what we're doing in terms of camps, but this is that's what RTP is at its core. And this year we're really
just so that everyone, direct action gets results. Look at those major victories that have been achieved by all that hard work. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why we use it as a strategy, because it works, not just because it's cool. And this year we're really energizing as a network. We've been somewhat dormant for about 3 years. And been some level of reflection. And now we've decided last year that we're targeting Drax. And just wanted to give an introduction about what Drax is, so we're all on the same page. Well, other than that in the background, which is that is Drax. But Drax is the single largest carbon emitter in the UK. So it's the biggest carbon emitter in the UK, and the next comes down steel and going down from there. But not only that, it's the biggest burner of trees. Drax burns trees as a power source, imported from all around the world. And this is some wetland forest, you can see. And I would explain, we'll explain in a second why they managed to get away with it, but this is just the top line. And in that process, it's a major driver in environmental racism in the way that it targets communities, frontline communities really suffering from Drax, and they specifically target communities that have the lowest political power, that are majority or over 25% people of color below the poverty line. But how does it do it functionally? Well, by huge financial backing, huge amounts of money that the government, and this statistic's gone up now. It's about 2 million a day. We've just got a report through. I need to change this. And they've been receiving about 2 million a day in subsidies since about 2016 on average. And these are not just subsidies, but they are subsidies that the government call renewable energy subsidies because of a very flawed policy that was introduced over the last 20 years or so. And it's basically that woody biomass, which means burning trees for making electricity, the kind of burning trees for energy being a thing that we've been doing for a very long time, and in fact caused the deforestation of most of Europe, is classified as carbon neutral, with this idea that, well, I'll explain it here. So this is how we're going to try and explain it. If you've ever seen, have you ever seen anyone here like a plant, like a tree when it's younger, and it grows up over time? And I don't know if you've seen that happen, but so you grow up and then the tree, and then according to the forestry industry, then you cut down the tree. That's the natural progression, and then you burn the tree. And in theory, in this process, it's carbon neutral because the tree absorbs carbon here and it burns it here. There are a few problems with this that I just want to lay out. And the very top line problems. First of all, I assume most people are familiar with trees. They take a while to grow. It can be 40 to 104 years for that carbon to be reabsorbed into trees. And in the process of turning something into a monoculture to be then harvested, burned, and then replanted, you do a massive damage to the soil that's relied upon in the whole ecosystem, biodiversity, and then generally just forest cover. So there's this lag time. So in theory, the idea is that you burn it and then it gets absorbed because trees grow and they absorb it, and then you burn it and it keeps going. But what's really happening is that the whole industry is playing a massive gamble with the future. It's saying that there may be a lag time. It may be that we massively increase carbon emissions to do this to start with, but eventually it will stop, and it misses the point that we're actually needing to act as urgently as possible right now to mitigate the most devastating effects of the climate crisis. And this is part of a global context of the way that climate mitigation is happening. largely backed by fossil fuel lobby, is the idea that we mitigate carbon emissions by planting trees, either afforesting large amounts of land or planting loads of trees and then burning them and then planting more trees as a neutral form of energy. And this appears in loads of IPCC, in all of the IPCC pathways to some extent. But if the way that governments have pledged to be afforesting and rolling out bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, there's a massive gap between the amount of land that they're saying in policy they're going to use and the amount of land that actually is in the world. Specifically, the amount of land that's supposed to be used for bioenergy and for afforestation and land-based mitigation is a fifth of the area of land used for agriculture globally. A fifth of the area of land used for agriculture globally. We need the land that's used for agriculture to feed people and have done for a long time. The realities of policies laid out like this would mean famine for the energy needs of global North countries to continue consuming, continue economic growth at the rate that they want to. And just let that sink in. And these I'll link to some reports if needed around, they're called the Land Gap Report that they put out back in COP26. So let's zoom back in on Drax for a second about what land they use. What is Drax using? The power station based just south of York in North Yorkshire. Well, first of all, the trees that Drax burn, less than 1% of them actually come from the UK. It burns so many trees that it actually burns more than the UK produces for forestry for anything each year. So most of the trees that come from the southern US states, some from Canada, some from Brazil, some from various Baltic states like Estonia, and a little bit from Portugal. I think these need to be updated for the current one, but this is from based on 2022 statistics. So they're imported, they're turned into pellets. They call them wood pellets. You take the tree, you turn it into little pellets. Like it's like cat litter, if you've ever seen it. It's basically, this is an entire industry based on the idea of turning trees into cat litter on a massive scale and then incinerating them for energy. The process of making this large-scale cat litter or wood pellets is incredibly polluting. Like this picture on the left, what looks like matchsticks here are whole trees. This is a factory that turns them into pellets and then it's produced and shipped off and packaged. You can see it down there. But like this is the trees scaled up and you can also see this massive plume of smoke. These industries are heavily polluting. They're really dangerous. They cause like loads of VOC with volatile organic compounds from the wood being burned. There's loads of wood dust everywhere, which is incredibly carcinogenic. If you've ever seen the warnings up in like work, if you ever worked on a building site or somewhere like that that's got big warnings about wood dust, it's one of those like carcinogenic materials that you need to wear proper masks and dealing with, but they're just exposing whole communities to it. But which communities is really important. Like who is it that they target and they put these on that won't complain or won't have the power to do anything when they do complain? And it's what in the US are called environmental justice communities, which is not a term that we use as much in the UK. But environmental justice communities are ones that are at least 25% people of color and an above average level of poverty. So communities with low political power or means to challenge on any legal front or have like the connections or networks to be able to challenge it, the people with the least political power. And this picture you've noticed on the left, I'll just focus in on it a second. This is one of those communities just here that lives in these houses. This is a Drax owned biomass site called Amite. These communities, and there's a short documentary that I'd quite like to show, but I don't think I'll have the time for. But I'm going to link you to.
I mean, how long is we've had people show 5, 10 minute videos before.
It's about 10 minutes. So maybe I could.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, you know, we don't always get lots of questions at the end. Sometimes we do, but I think if you want, you can.
I think I'll show it then because I think it's really important. But so I'll let them explain in their own words in a second. But like this is one community, and it shows just quite how close, and I think it's hard to see quite how much it devastates communities like this until you hear them talking about it themselves. But just before we hear about them, I'm going to zoom out with some historical and geographical context. So this is the southern states of the US where you say 69% of pellets from Drax a source. And this map was actually made in 1861. It was made by someone who wanted to map the population density of enslaved people across the cotton plantations in the southern states of the US. You'll notice there's dense areas like here, here, here. Those areas are where there is exports along rivers or ports to Europe for cotton to be farmed by exploited people and then taken to the UK or the rest of Europe for profit. That's why it's set up like this. It's an economic system based on enslaved people. Slavery ended. But this map overlaid on it is those environmental justice communities in red. It's impossible not to notice quite how well matched up they are. These are the same people a few generations later that are suffering from higher than average poverty and being targeted by industries like the biomass industry. If we skip to the next slide, this is just a map, but a bit clearer. All of the green dots, and I'm really sorry for anyone who's got red to green color blindness, but hopefully you can see them. I'll just point them out here. There's like dots here and here and here. They're all centered on these communities. They're the places with least political power, but also because they're for export to the UK and Europe. It's the same systems, it's the same roots by large corporations exploiting the ancestors of the same people that were exploited in the slave trade. And that's really important just to visualize that, because that's not a long period of history, but we're still like suffering from, people are still suffering under the same systems. I am going to stop sharing and then reshare to be able to make sure the settings are okay to share a video, because otherwise it messes up the audio.
That's powerful info, Curly. That really is.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me there is that, they're chopping down old growth forests that, takes a massively long time to grow and putting it in burn up, and it's crazy. They say we're planting new trees a few inches tall. Okay, here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely. So this is something put together by Greenpeace or a group called Unearthed. It's like a documentary. Just under 10 minutes. And this is in their own words, the people who are living in Gloucester, Mississippi.
What if I told you that a power company that sells itself as the UK's largest source of renewable energy is actually fueling environmental racism in the US? It's called Drax, and it burns wood grown in the US to produce electricity here in the UK. At Unearthed, we uncovered the ways in which Drax has polluted the air of Black communities in America's Deep South.
I'm living in fear because I can't breathe. And if you can't breathe, you can't live. So I'm not scared to tell nobody that I'm having difficulties breathing.
We've also found evidence that Drax has repeatedly breached US clean air rules, risking the health of the communities who live near its wood pellet mills.
Even for the wood pellet industry, this seems like a high number of violations, and a lot of violations that are due to Drax not doing what they should do.
My message to the UK government is that they should not be subsidizing environmental racism in the Southeast US.
We're about to map out the reality of what is happening behind the scenes of this major British biomass company.
When I look into the community in Gloucester, Mississippi, and I see what they are suffering from, I cannot land on anything other than evil. It has to be evil that would drive you to put a biomass plant on top of a community and force them to take it.
In the southern US is a small town called Gloucester in Mississippi. Further in is a trailer park community called Blackman Hole, and stationed right next to it is a wood pellet plant called Amite that opened for business in 2014 and was soon releasing illegal levels of toxic pollutants into the air of this predominantly Black community. But the owners of this plant live a long way away from Gloucester, Mississippi. Drax, this huge biomass energy firm, calls itself the UK's largest source of renewable energy, and gets millions from the UK government and invests big in its clean image.
At Drax, we're committed to a zero-carbon, lower-cost energy future. And now we're the largest decarbonization project in Europe.
But what does biomass even mean? Biomass involves cutting down trees and compressing them into wood pellets, which are then burnt for electricity. But many aren't aware of the toxic emissions associated with the wood pellet making industry, or the communities affected by it. According to our findings, half of Drax plants are located in predominantly black areas in the US. Critics say that the opening of these plants has increased air pollution and noise pollution and also reduced biodiversity.
We support healthy forests and biodiversity. The biomass that we use is renewable because the forests are growing and continue to capture more carbon than we emit from the power station.
But let's begin in Gloucester, where Drax arrived back in 2014.
It was a lot of buzz happening in the town, a lot of excitement, and rightfully so. This is why there was a high level of excitement. This is a new opportunity. And unbeknownst to us, even during this time, high levels of toxins were being emitted into the air.
In 2020, the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, MDEQ, fined this plant $2.5 million for exceeding legal limits on toxic chemicals called volatile organic compounds, VOCs for short, since 2016. Each year, the plant was releasing 3 times more than was legally permitted.
VOCs can be dangerous at any level. If you were to be exposed to VOCs, you would notice symptoms like dizziness, nausea, eye irritation, and headache. What we really know about VOCs, what we know to be true, is that they are cancer causing. And that's a massive concern to these areas that we call sacrifice zones, where they're constantly coming in contact with these exposures.
We're suffering. Sometimes the air is, good, but the majority of the time, it's hard to breathe. We have a lot of people around here that's starting to have respiratory problems, and then we don't know what effect down the road this is going to have on the children.
My name is Jasmine Jenkins. I've been living in Gloucester for 7 years now. This is my house right here. Me and my kids and my husband live here. This is the fence that's between us, and that is Drax biomass over there. The air pollution in Gloucester is very serious. Like right now, me and all 3 of my kids suffer from allergies real bad. My husband has to wash our cars every 2 weeks because of the particles and stuff on it, dust and stuff. Once my kids older, would they be down bad in health? Would they have asthma, allergies problem all their life? Like, how would they be once they grow up?
Where did the $2.5 million go? That's a $2.5 million question.
That fine should have came to our community. A community that has nothing, and you take $2.5 million and you put it wherever, when you have a community that's in need.
We've looked at all kinds of non-compliance in the wood pellet industry across all 10 states in the South where they are. And there's been a ton of non-compliance, but what stood out for me with Drax, they supplied the state of Mississippi with what is the clearest example of I can't prove fraudulent, but extremely dubious emissions testing in order to avoid doing the right thing. And, we don't have the data to prove that it was intentional, but even if it wasn't intentional, it was incredibly reckless, because we now know once the real tests were done, their emissions were far higher than they were claiming.
But we've discovered that amite is not the only US plant where Drax has been releasing illegal levels of VOCs into poor and predominantly black communities. In August this year, Drax agreed to pay $1.6 million apiece for breaches of environmental rules at its Louisiana pellet plants, Morehouse, and LaSalle Bioenergy. That's a total of $3.2 million for a pattern of illegal emissions on a similar scale to that seen in Mississippi. But that's not all. It follows an earlier $20,000 settlement that Drax reached with Louisiana regulators in 2020 for a string of other environmental violations at its Morehouse plant.
All three of their plants were not only emitting hundreds of tons of illegal VOCs every year they were operating, but we now know from these notice of penalties that they were committing a lot of other important violations that were leading to air pollution controls not working within their intended range, which could emit all kinds of higher levels of emissions.
Remarkably, Drax doesn't actually have to publish up-to-date air pollution data on its plants, but the latest data it published for 2021 shows that in that year, Drax was still breaching limits at least one of those plants. Despite these environmental breaches, Drax is classified as a green energy company in the UK, and as a result, it receives the equivalent of £2 million a day in UK government subsidies.
Hi, Miss Camilla. How are you? I'm doing these elbows. How you doing?
I'm doing
I want you to say that again. Those 3 words.
I can't breathe.
Okay.
There it is.
And Black Lives Matter. We have different types of assaults against our health, different sorts of brutality. So there are more ways to choke Black lives than putting a knee to the neck.
It's not all about me. It's about the world and its community and the people that's in this community and the kids and elderly. Can't sit back and just assume toxic air and think that it's okay. You gotta tell somebody, you gotta let them know. We need help.
Wow, very powerful. Thank you, Curly. Important.
Yeah. I think just gonna quickly open up some breakout rooms with people if they're okay with that. To basically, for those who watched it through, kind of talk about how you felt about it, because it's quite hard hitting, and I think it needs a bit of space. So I'm just gonna do that
Right.
now.
Good idea. We like a bit of interaction. Smaller groups can talk more as well. You're doing that, yeah? Okay.
Yeah. I'm just gonna do that now. Oh wait. Great.
Very powerful film. It's good to realise how the effects, what we do in certain countries affects many other communities all around the world.
Okay, everyone should have an invite to a thing. It's just talk about how you felt from the film. I'll send that through in a little note. Looks like most of the groups have someone in.
Great work. I'm glad we're doing breakout groups. We should use it more often.
Yeah, it's first time I've done this online. There's one person who's only got one. It's only. I'm going to move Catherine to group 3.
Okay, great. Giving them 10 minutes. Cool.
Yeah, I'll probably close it a bit sooner. I just did it on the default.
Yeah. As it does.
Yeah, and I figured people here, it's fine if people don't want to participate, because like sometimes it's nice just to watch, you know.
I need to learn doing breakout rooms more often. It's something I need to practice.
Yeah,
I think
sometimes they're overused. So
I think it just really helps people get a bit more chance to chat. In big groups of 20, 30, 40, you know, few voices speak, but you know, in smaller groups, everyone feels they've had a chance to say stuff. So is this the first time you've done breakout rooms?
For this talk?
For this talk, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the first time it's done online, so which is interesting. It's definitely much more, it's easier to manage in person, but yeah.
All right.
But we
Joe,
normally do.
Okay. Joe, I know comes quite often and cooks for the kids around this time, just listens in. But, so me, you, and Linda and Simon. Simon, can you hear us? Simon in this room, or has he put him into one?
Well, this is just the main room. Everyone else.
Yeah,
this
I
is
didn't
the
join. I'm multitasking, sorry.
No, it's
Don't worry.
I figured that's fine. We can just have like a breakout room here.
That's totally fine. Linda also, it's very late for her. She's in another country, so it's like.
Oh yeah.
Linda, are you awake or alive? Okay. Just to say, I think it's really. I'm glad you've reminded me this. I'm actually maybe going to build a 5-10 minute breakout into future webinars. Something we should do, just because. You know, I've been in other groups where we do the webinar and we do the breakout, and you just get a much better chance to chat amongst 3 or 4 of you for 5-10 minutes than you do when there's 30 people on the screen. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually, this talk normally has 2 breakout sessions, but I might just rattle through the rest of the content, because then it gives a bit of time for questions at the end, which is a shame.
You know, I don't mind rolling on till 10 past if we need to, 15 even. You know, we usually go over 5 to 15 as it flows. It depends on the things. Especially if I've had a breakout, a chance to chat. This is really, it's a really good talk. The film is really powerful.
Absolutely, and it's like that. I mean, I'll say this later as well, but those Kathy and Crystal, who I think are in there, I think maybe just Kathy's in there, actually came over to the UK last year, and they're going to come over again this year for a week, just to kind of challenge Drax and come to there. But yeah, they just keep going with this stuff. But Drax just don't talk to them. They deny stuff, or they cancel meetings.
Well, that's the best way I've seen it actually put in that film, to sum it up. And I know about Drax from a few years ago. Campaign to get Helen in here. He's very big on Drax. She's been because I think they're not that far. So putting people into breakout rooms, just give me a quick lesson for 30 seconds before we come back, or a minute.
Yeah, go down to the bottom, and there should be one that says breakout rooms. At the moment, if you click on it, it'll probably just show you who's in which room. But before, maybe you can fiddle around with it as well when we bring people back. But you can, normally you click it, it'll just basically, you click that and it talks you through it. How many rooms do you want to set up? Click set up, click go, and then people get invited. But yeah, it just makes the most of finding it there. I'm going to close them.
4 rooms, and then you highlight who comes in. You know, Catherine to this one.
You can actually you do it randomly. It's easy. You just say number of rooms and it just randomly assigns people, which is quite nice. But you can do it manually as well if you want to say like these people.
All right. So next time I've got a team of 20 people, click that button, put 4 rooms, and it will randomly put 5 into each. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just bring people back.
Phoenix, can you hear me?
I can, Linda, loud and clear.
I don't like the breakout room concept at all. Remember that this is something that we share with others. Let me just finish. And they watch it again and again, and it's just too much dead time.
It's recording at the moment, so we'll discuss this another point. But I you know, it's good to do experiments. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think you're beaming back.
Yeah. I hope you had okay conversations. I'm sorry, it's something really brutal about coming back after a breakout room and cutting your conversations like that without being able to experience them myself is much nicer in person. But we've done this. And now I hope you had a chance to reflect with each other. And I'm just going to talk a bit about how our plans, what we're doing this year. And let me just, I think, and also a mild request, if you could make sure you're muted, because I think there's an echo somewhere, but yeah.
I've just muted a couple. Remember,
thank you.
I think you need to regulate.
So Drax itself is held up by various things that keep it going as a company. Firstly, we've got legislation. It's held up by the law that says burning pellets is carbon neutral. It's held up by a huge amount of subsidies, and until recently it's pretty much like relies on subsidies. And until recently it got more subsidies than it did in profits, and it's just switching now. The workers that go to work every day and at the moment rely on Drax for jobs are a core part of what holds up Drax. The people who finance Drax with loans and insurance, and even customers that allow for them to function. The supply chain, they need wood pellets coming in multiple times a day by the train load. And then also a really core part that you saw in that documentary, or mini documentary before, is their greenwash. They have to give the impression to the world that they're a socially conscious environmental company, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to get away with everything that they do. And now I'm just going to give you a little bit of technical context about where we are at with Drax. At the moment, Drax has got subsidies running out. In 2027, their current subsidy system, which guarantees them profits effectively until 2027, and started in 2016, is running out. And they have pledged and are attempting to put planning applications in for bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, which means that they can claim that they're carbon negative because they release so much carbon, but it counts as zero. If they capture some of that non-existing carbon, then they call it carbon negative, and they're a net negative power station on paper. That's all that really matters to them because they want to make money from it. So at the moment, and I'll just explain this diagram, we have current subsidy system that's propping them up.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Kurt, I'm just going to give you a bit of feedback. It was looking slightly blurry to me. Simon has requested, could you stop sharing and then share again? The presentation is quite blurry. Probably optimize the video you showed. Thank you, Simon, technical support team there.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Really appreciate that. I had forgotten that I'd left it.
Much better. Yeah, very clear. Carry on.
Perfect. Nice one. So yeah, we've got this subsidy system, current subsidies, which are running out in 2027. We've got decision, and I'll do this in a second, and we've got what they're applying for is from potentially 2027, maybe from the 2030s, they're getting subsidies up until 2050 and beyond for what's called power BECCS. And this could be 40 billion of subsidies, a huge amount, potentially one of the biggest energy projects in Europe in terms of cost. And at the moment, there's a decision point happening in the next few months around what called bridging subsidies, something that means that they keep getting money from the government without them needing to build carbon capture and storage, and that lasts from 2027 for an as yet undefined amount of time. The decisions for all of their future subsidies that basically prop up the entire global industry, or at least the starting point for the global industry, are happening this year, over the next year and over the next, and then the final contract for the power BECCS ones is in 2027. So these next 3 years are incredibly crucial for the campaign, and this next year is particularly pivotal. That's the context we're in for Drax, and why we're targeting Drax this year, not only because it's so bad, but because we can actually impact them this year. So we believe in RTP that the best way to challenge Drax and other companies like it is undermine their profits, the one thing that they care about. Because if the money stops, they'll stop. We know that it takes a diversity of tactics for this. We know that we need to work within existing campaigns to win. We need to work with groups that already happen, that are doing one side, that are doing lobbying the government. We need to work with the little community groups that are coming up with like, whatever. We sit within it, but we target business as usual. We target their reputation because that is entirely crucial for them to get subsidies, for them to prop up the other things. And And from doing that, we create real financial damage. And this is an actual picture here on the left of their stocks over the last year. They have been going down. There've been loads of more attention on Drax and for various different reasons. We've even seen the main wood pellet supplier go bankrupt in the last year. And for the context of Reclaim the Power came out of the climate camp movement in the UK, and the first ever climate camp that started a global movement was in Drax in 2006. It kickstarted this national movement against coal. Drax doesn't burn coal anymore. And I'm going to skip this breakout, sadly, which is the nicest one, because I'm trying to keep a little bit of time. But maybe if you think to yourself for a moment about a time that you felt powerful with other people. The last time that happened, this could be something like making some food with a little community in a kitchen and like supplying it to loads of people, or it could be that incredibly powerful direct action that you were part of that shut something down, or it could just be something totally random that I can't think of. But hold that in your brain, the last time you felt powerful. Maybe tell someone later. And yeah, on that thought, what we're doing in Reclaim the Power to target Drax is creating a climate camp again. We're coming back to Drax because we've got unfinished business. We've ended with coal, but they've started with this biomass industry, and we can't leave that be. And we're gonna come together. And what we've done in the past, and Reclaim the Power have been running camps for 10 years. It brings together hundreds, if not thousands, of people to go straight to the target that's causing the damage. And we learn new ways of working together. It's a place for innovation. We boost existing campaigns like the campaign against Drax, and we directly impact the industry as much as we possibly can, whether that's shutting down coal mines, whether that's impacting on fracking. So we're doing a camp this year. If you haven't told already, and that's from the 8th to the 13th of August. The target's going to be Drax, and loads of prep's been happening already. We've got loads of working groups working on it. The network's properly re-energized. We even had 80 people come to the last gathering about it in York. And we've got another gathering coming up in Leeds next month. And when we come together as Reclaim the Power in one space, not just in the camp, but in the gatherings, we organize by consensus, which means that everyone there has a voice and everyone's voice is heard. That when we make decisions, everyone is included in it, and we make sure we organize against hierarchy in every space that we do. That our culture fundamentally is about care for people, that we're building not just to a camp, we're not just on a shutting down Drax, but we're building a movement. We're making it bigger, and we're bringing as many people in as possible across generations. We make direct action accessible. We even in the last gathering had an agreement that for any action that we planned, there is an accessible alternative if that is not an accessible action, recognizing the importance of disruptive direct action that's incredibly inaccessible, but also the importance of having everyone involved as much as possible. Whenever we can, we're in solidarity with workers. Workers are not an enemy in this fight, it's the capitalist. That's the core fundamental part of Reclaim the Power. This picture, in case you're wondering, and I haven't actually given context to all of them, this isn't, sadly, a worker in the fracking sites being blocked, locking on with us. It is actually a member of the security team locking on, sticking their arm in the tube to avoid someone else going, but it's an excellent picture. And we're driven by our aims, not media attention. It's not about stunts to get media attention, but about how do we shut down Drax, and how do we impact Drax, and how do we make sure that this industry stops as much as possible. And fracking is a good example. That's why we use direct action. It's about directly disrupting the industry, bringing about the change that you want to see in the world. This picture, if you've not seen it before, this is someone, I believe, from Channel 4, holding a lock-on tube with a thing to lock to it that's been seized by the police, so they've taken it from the camp. This is a cop going to arrest them because they think they're about to lock on. The coming chaos from that was I wasn't there to see it, but it's pretty funny. But yeah, this is our relationship to mainstream press. As much as possible in our organizing in the camps we do, we challenge oppression. We have working groups that specifically think about how how within RTP do we recreate and attempt not to recreate the oppressive systems that we live within, understanding that it's inevitable, but that we need to work against it, and that as much as possible we support each other to do it, knowing that we're going to have to, collectively we'll be always learning new things and changing the way that we're working, and we have to continue to reflect on that. And something that's quite fundamental is that we aren't alone in this campaign or this fight, that we stand on the shoulders of a rich history of direct action, and honor the learnings that we've had from before that, and not just the last 10 years of RTP, but for the decades of resistance in the UK and beyond. And also, like, the camp will be fun. I think that's a core part, is that once something that people want to be there and will enjoy being there. So kind of things that you might expect in a camp. We'll have lots of workshops, including practical stuff, how to take direct action, but also broader than that in the movement. There'll be kids space, there'll be communal kitchens, everyone chips in, everyone's crew. And we'll have wheelchair access, including wheelchair accessible toilets. There'll be compost loos, which is exciting, if you're not thinking it's exciting. Running water, which is especially exciting, and renewable energy. And like, the basic summary of that is it's a community. We want to be building a community that's long lasting. We're not just coming for one action and then leaving. And this community was genuinely made to bring about change, and we will do that. And I guess now it's kind of over to you and the rest of us to see if you wanted to get involved in this, is that if you could help us make this camp as good as it can be, but not only this camp, but building Reclaim the Power back from its largely dormant period and this really exciting mobilization that's happening. We've got gatherings that are coming up. We've actually got gatherings already set in the locations from here until the camp, roughly every month. The next one's going to be in Leeds. The date has been announced of the 20th to the 21st of April, but the location hasn't yet. So that may change, I'm not sure. But we also have like virtual working group meetings. So there's loads of working groups within RTP, meets, share tasks, and like keep going with it. For example, the outreach working group that I'm in. And part of that is running this talk that I've given today, ideally in person. We're going to be running it in as many cities and locations as possible. And people on this call are in a unique position that you probably have access to space in a way that other people don't. So if you would be interested in supporting a talk, interested in delivering a talk, or just generally wanting to stay in touch, do pop your email or phone number in the chat here. You can directly message me to it and I'll save it and work them out later. But if not, if you don't have the time for that and you're just interested and you want to hear it, if you can book off the 8th to the 13th of August and just come to the camp, that would be amazing. So yeah, that's about me. The main thing is, yeah, if we can stay in touch, if you could drop your phone number or whatever. And yeah, I think that's my bit done.
Curly, thank you so much. That was really impressive. That's fantastic. What a journey to show everyone from the many years of Reclaim the Power, and a living testament to, you know, direct action gets results. Folks, is there any questions, feedback? There's a little reaction tab down the bottom. You can raise your hand like that so we can tell who's 1, 2, 3. Please do direct message Curly an email or a phone number if you want to get involved with the camp or you want to do a talk. Helen, quick off the marks. University Challenge, Leeds.
Yeah, just to say the April meeting will be the 20th and the 21st. It's just which venue at the moment. Yeah.
Can you put a link in for folk here so that they can check that meeting?
Yeah, I can get that.
Maybe we could get a reminder closer to the time by somebody here in the group.
That'll be me. That'll be me.
Thanks. You know how life gets in the way.
Is that closer to April or August?
Both, really. Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can work that out, I'm sure. I guess I'll probably need to head off soon, but if there are any like questions around Reclaim the Power or maybe Drax, might be that we have to follow up in a different time.
So anyone else got questions, things? We are going to leave the Zoom on for another 15, 20 minutes after we stop recording, because it's a new tradition where people can chat a little bit afterwards. But any other questions or feedback before Curly beams out to the Reclaim the Massive Power team? Debs and the anti-fracking nanas.
Helen, is that meeting in person or online?
What, the April one?
Yeah.
In person. It's a weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Crash space available.
Is there a bed available?
Yeah.
Cool. I might come to that. I'll see if I can book it off work or if I'm off that weekend.
All right. I think Rory was next off the mark, or he was there and then he's gone. But Rory, then Chris. Rory?
I suppose something I'm struggling slightly with is so obviously Drax are quite an evil company, but I feel I'm not sure I fully understand like what's the core of the argument for stopping Drax when we obviously need power. So I mean, it's obviously cutting down virgin trees to burn them is wrong, and obviously having huge amounts of pollution from the plants is massively wrong, that causes huge amounts of impact to people. And what would we want them to do differently, I suppose, other than just stop? Sorry, I know this is a bit like saying they're evil for these reasons, and I don't understand why we should stop them, which is sorry, I haven't got a very problem.
No, it totally makes sense. And like, it is a fair point to say we can't just stop them right then. Like, they are at the moment a part of the energy system we rely on. And they're also a company that people rely on for jobs. Nowhere near the amount of people that they'll claim, but they do still do that. And like, I think this is a really core point about why Reclaim the Power works within existing campaigns. Because at the moment there's a group called Stop Burning Trees Coalition, as well as other like NGO groups that will be looking at how do we implement a just transition at Drax. Because largely speaking, Drax does need to shut down. They themselves admit this. Like, Drax isn't as a power station has said that 2050 they're going to shut down. All other power stations of the same size and age have been started to be decommissioned. They're old, they're dangerous for people who work there. So it's undeniable that they need to be phased out. It's about it happening quickly, and it also happening so that there's a transition of the workforce in Drax, so that people don't lose jobs, so that they are retrained into work that they want to be doing, rather than in the dangerous, dirty, and like health-harming industry in Drax. So there's a really big part, and there's a lot of work being done around just transition, what that's going to look like, how it can be implemented, doing like worker surveys and like work to kind of set out what actually do people want to be working in, how do we want to change it. And there's also like a thing around energy use itself. Like, part of challenging capitalism is saying that we don't want infinite growth, and that actually this idea that we want an infinitely growing amount of consumption, including electricity consumption as a part of that, needs to be challenged. Like, for example, Drax produces a large amount of electricity, right, and energy, but it's roughly the same amount of electricity that we saved if we appropriately insulated houses across the UK. So it's about thinking about what our priorities are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I suppose it crystallized some thoughts, actually. I suppose it's this idea of Drax was a coal power plant, and so the reason why they're saying this is zero carbon is because it's better than coal, which, yes, but we shouldn't be burning coal. But then what they're kind of saying is, oh yes, we're using renewable timber, which is lovely, nice trees and bunnies and everything, so there's no problem. We're creating eco habitats, where actually they're going ravaging habitats, and then when they produce it, they're causing huge amounts of pollution. And I suppose that's probably why it has to stop, because of that, how they're fueling it rather than what they're burning.
It's the scale. It's the scale, basically. Yeah. Like, the idea around biomass is that you can, let's say you live with a wood burning stove in a forest, right? And you occasionally cut down a tree and you burn the tree, and then you keep going the tree. You're part of an ecosystem that's maintained. But if you're doing it at a scale to at the scale that Drax is doing, clearing forest, literally using more wood than the UK could produce if it would. It's nowhere near that. And it's about that difference. Like if you're burning it at the scale that Drax is, you are just pumping out, and it's actually more carbon intensive than coal. So although there's this, but burning wood has always been less energy efficient. That's why we started using coal. There was a reason. Anyway,
we hop over to Chris, who's got a question waiting, and I'm not sure whether Helen's doing bunny rabbits or she wanted
can I just come in and say, of course, the other thing is that renewable subsidy, it's going to Drax, so it can't go to the wind and the tidal and all the others that it really ought to be going to.
£2 million a day or something outrageous. Chris, and then Debs.
Yeah, I'll just carry on from where Roy started, actually. I mean, direct action, does get stuff done momentarily, but is there a positive message that you want to bring the rest of the population with you of the change that we actually need to, as a nation, get heard? What is the message, and how do you get direct action to marry a positive pro something message?
Absolutely. Well, my from a perspective of being part of like the Drax campaign generally to start with, now I'm going into RTP. Like what we generally say is that yes, we want to stop Drax and we stop the funding, but we also want that money that goes into Drax to be funding community, like real solutions that focus around care, that focus around looking after people. Like a just transition isn't just about energy, right? It's about putting money back into things that actually matter for a society. It's putting it into healthcare. It's about putting it into like community projects. It's putting it into space that people can use. And that's the transition we want to do. And we do try and articulate exactly how it's going to be articulated for the camp. I'm not totally sure. It's not been firmed up yet. There's a different working group doing that one. But as the Drax campaign as a whole, we talk about funding real solutions, centering people over profit.
Okay, Debs, last one. I've got a quick one to throw in. We'll wrap it up there, I think, because Kelly's got to go soon, but we will leave the Zoom on for 15 minutes if you want to chat about anything, bit of networking. Debs.
I'm sorry if you covered this in your presentation, but am I right in thinking that Drax mess with the calculations on the emissions because they calculate it where they're chopping the trees down, so the UK then doesn't have to factor that into their calculations?
Yeah. So this is a one that's taken me a while to get my head around too. The fact that the pellets are imported is quite important in what Drax can get away with. So emissions from burning the pellets aren't counted in the UK because of a rule that tried to stop double counting. So in the US, you cut down trees. If that land changes from forest to not forest, then that is counted as a carbon store lost, and it's carbon emissions in the US is counted there. So if that happens, they say, well, if that's happening in the US, then we don't want to be counting it in the UK as well, because then we'd be counting it twice. We'd count it as the carbon lost from cutting it down of all those trees, and when we burn it, we'd just be counting the carbon twice. So we can't do that. We can't carbon it in the UK. But then in the US, they're not counted yet. And often land, even when you cut down all the trees in a forest, which can be monoculture, and then you plant new ones, even if it's going to take years and years for it to reabsorb, it's still a forest. There's going to be no land change. So the official land use hasn't changed. So it's not counted in the US. It's not counted in the UK. So it disappears somewhere when it's transported by ship across the ocean. That's the idea. And it's totally ridiculous. But it's the loophole that's effectively allowed this industry to continue funneling money and function.
Hey. Okay. Just welcome Andrea there. Lovely to see the old Occupy team beaming in. Just briefly, I just want to do a quick power blast there for Curly and the Reclaim the Power and the camp, and I think we're going to wrap it up. But basically, and we will leave the Zoom on 15 minutes for people want to chat afterwards. Just to say, one of the most exciting and fun things you could do with your life this year is to go to this Drax camp, to go to a climate camp, to go to a Reclaim the Power camp. Is one of the most empowering, fun, and exciting things you can do. They are, accessible and getting lots of people together from all different walks of life. And it's a really empowering thing to be part of a group of people going to try and make a difference, and whatever you can do, from transport to cooking food to making tea to putting up the tents to doing the comms to doing the social media. There's lots of different working groups there. They need help, and you will make new friends and connections, and you will have fun, possibly being naughty for a very good cause to protect the environment and things for the future. So just big up there to Curly and all the RTP crew and all those of us who've helped over the years with Reclaim the Power. We need you to get involved and help before the event and actually at the Drax camp as well, and hopefully many more camps happen. There's a climate camp in Cymru. Hopefully someone put that in the chat, in Cymru in Wales, coming up as well. Get to that and get involved. If you want to type a couple of words in the chat about what you thought about tonight, it's really nice. We'll put the chat out later on the Telegram and the WhatsApp. Please join the Telegram and the WhatsApp groups for Climate Emergency Centres and Network. Okay, pop what you thought in the chat. Thank you very much, Curly. Last word to Curly. Big up. Thanks for coming.
Thank you all. I'm going to head off. But yeah, if you could send me chat and any questions that come through, please do. All right, bye.
All right, save the chat, folks. Thank you very much, Curly. Going to stop recording there. You can stay and chat if you want. Okay, is that stop the recording? Stop the recording.